Hi everyone, it's Eli. You know how sometimes you stumble upon something truly game-changing in healthcare? Well, I found it. KinetiSense. This cutting-edge motion capture technology is transforming movement, assessment, and recovery. Imagine getting instant AI-driven insights without any wearables on your patient. That's right, no ping pong balls needed. Just pure, accurate data. Perfect for boosting athletic performance, pinpointing imbalances, and refining rehab. Top professionals worldwide trust KinetiSense to maximize productivity and results. Check out our partner page to learn more. Experience the revolution in movement. Welcome to Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More, the podcast that gives you a viewpoint in sports medicine that can't be found anywhere else. I'm your host, Eli Halleck, and we have a fantastic show ahead of us today. So, let's get started. Welcome to Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More. I'm your host, Eli Halleck, and we have a great show. We have a unique guest that we really want to talk about her background and her certification. We'd like to welcome to our show today, Jasmine Haas. How you doing, Jasmine?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. You are a certified mental performance consultant and director of mental performance at Lakeside Aquatic Club in Dallas, Fort Worth. That's a lot to put on a card, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a job title. We spent a lot of time creating that, but it's actually not the wordiest one I've had.
Well, that's kind of scary. And then also you have a private practice that we'll talk about later called Brainwave Performance. Is that correct? Or Brainwaves Performance?
Brain waves, yes.
Okay, so it's plural. Don't forget the S people.
You only have one brain wave, you're in trouble.
Yeah, this is true. Well, my wife argues that every now and then, so I wouldn't be surprised. But that's a different story for a different time. I am just intrigued by this certification that you have, but I'd really like to know, first off, how you got where you're at now and your educational process to get there.
I originally went to West Virginia University. At the time, they're one of the only sports psychology programs in the country for undergrad. And I actually found it. I grew up in the town that West Virginia University is in. And in high school, I started skipping class and I would go over and sneak into the PhD lectures because
Okay, people at home, don't let your kids hear that part, okay?
no, it worked out really well educationally. So I snuck into the PhD lectures. I really liked them. And I was like, this is what I want to do. So the dean of the college loved that later when he found out. He's like, you were doing what? I was like, well, nobody stopped me and I learned a lot. So that was kind of my motto for all of my education is just nobody's going to stop me from learning this. While I was in undergrad at West Virginia, I started minoring in coaching because I had been an athlete, but I hadn't been a coach. And so I was like, I need to learn both sides in order to really understand both populations I'm working with. And in one of those classes, I had a classmate, he's the captain of the swim team at the time. And I started looking at sports psychology and what he was doing because he was training for Olympic trials at the time. And I was like, whoa, this really fits in. Because in sports psychology, they tell you you shouldn't do sports psychology with the sport you did at a high level because you'll come at it from the standpoint of, well, when I was an athlete, this is what I did. And swimming is just it's so mental. Like it is you and your thoughts and you have to have control over those thoughts in order to have a good performance. And so my professor who taught most of my classes at the time, she was his sports psych for their team. So I learned a lot through both of them. And he and I started kind of on the back of napkins, just being like, what would this look like? How do we meticulously make this as good as it could possibly be? And so then both of us ended up, we went up to Ithaca College up in upstate New York, and he ended up as the GA for the swim team there. And I was the sports psych for the divers. And the swimmers were like, well, you're already on deck. can you do stuff with us? And so we started a program there. And we were both really lucky to have a really great mentor there who he started a program for Cornell. And he's one of those very applied, very creative people. And I think that's something in sports like you have to be so creative of just, I mean, we would sit there and be like, if you had whiter teeth, would the athletes trust you more? If you sharpened your fingernails, would you take a second off your swim? So just looking at things from all lenses, and we would pull things from like teaching podcasts and musicians, and just okay, if we take this, how can we apply it to what we're doing? And so that was like a 10-year process, which is a little crazy now looking at it. It started in 2016.
A
So we're
whole decade. Oh my.
whole decade. Yep. So after I graduated from grad school, I went and worked with the military for a year down at Fort Hood in Killeen, Texas. And that was really different. I was working primarily with wounded warriors, and the training process at the time, so the credential you asked about was just coming out, and it didn't hold a lot of weight yet because it was so new. And so I was still working towards that, but at the time, the military had one of the best credentials and set of post-grad training you could get. And so for really the first month I worked there, you would just go in every day. They would be like, all right, teach me about imagery. You would teach it and they would just rip it to shreds. And I mean, it was again so meticulous. It was like your handwriting was bad, do it again, right? Like you should be doing every other line with a different color and in all caps so you can read it. And at the time, it was a horrible process, but I think it did make me a lot better. It's just trial by fire. I started that job August 2019. So a little bit of foreshadowing in the story here for those of you who don't know. Shit hit the fan in 2019. So we got
Just a little bit. Just a little bit.
just a little bit. So we weren't allowed on base anymore as of about March, and we were working from home. And that allowed me to, I was living in Waco at the time. So I started kind of going up to Dallas a little bit. And Andrew, who he was the one who was the swimmer I met at West Virginia, he was working with Lakeside Aquatic at the time. For those of you who don't know the world of swimming, they're a gold medal club for USA Swimming. They're one of the best teams in the country. So at the time, he was like, hey, come start doing a little bit of just, meet my swimmers and, what do you think I should do with them as far as like mental training and just kind of consulting with the coaches. And I didn't long term want to stay with the military. I knew I wanted to get back towards working with athletes. And so I had an opportunity to work for a school in more of a coaching capacity. And I was like, okay, that's a great opportunity. So moved up to Dallas, started working for the school, and started kind of going and just in person seeing some of the Lakeside athletes and forming some different sessions that we could use with them. Then one day, one of the coaches came, and I didn't know anything about USA Swimming at the time. I had only worked with college swimmers, and I didn't realize you have to be USA Swimming certified to be on deck. It is like a hard, like you cannot be on deck without the
No
certificate.
questions asked. This is mandatory.
Exactly. Well, I didn't realize that. And so I had a coach come up and say, why are you on deck? Get off our pool deck. And I was like, oh. So I went and got certified so that nobody could kick me off the pool deck ever
Once
again.
is enough, right? Yep,
That
totally.
was it. So I went and got certified at unattached to a club. And then since I had the certification, one day Andrew called me up and he said, hey, one of our coaches, her CPR certification has lapsed and she's running practice at one of the pools we don't have anyone else at tonight. Can you just come and be there so we have someone CPR on deck? And so we're good for liability. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. I'm not doing anything. So I show up, mind you, like I've been around the culture of the sport. I have not coached, nor have I really, I learned how to swim, but I was not a swimmer. I played ice hockey and lacrosse, very different. Um, so I show up and the coach, and she's great. She's a former Olympic medalist from China. She goes, all right, you got it. I'll just sit here. And I was like, I don't,
I got
I
nothing. Wait.
no, I was like, at that point, I didn't even know what IM order was, which for those of you who don't know swimming, that's like showing up to an NFL practice and not knowing how many yards are on a football field. So great learning curve for me there. I think I had them kick for like an hour. But after that, so the head coach of that site, his name's Steve Matier. For those of you who are like, Matier, his son is the quarterback for Oklahoma right now. So great mentor. He used to coach for the United States, and he and Andrew kind of sat down, and Andrew said, well, she's coached before. She coached lacrosse, so she knows coaching, and we can teach her swimming. We really need a coach. And Steve said, all right, hire her, which was a great leap of faith for him. And so he and Andrew really taught me the sport, which was a very trying couple of years. I had to learn the sport at like a very high level very, very quickly. Props to them for having that patience to teach me all of that. But I think in the end, it made me a lot better because I got to see the coaching side of things in a high pressure situation and really learn the sport from a different lens. And so because I was already there coaching part-time, and mind you, I'm still working at the school, so I'm working like 15-hour days every day, and that was miserable. But I was doing some sports psych sessions on the side, and then Steve said, "Okay, I want this for my kids." And Sue, the Olympian from China, she was like, "I want this from my kids as well." And then our head coach, Jason Walter, he happened around that time to go over to the Olympic Training Center. And they were talking a lot about the importance of mental health and mental performance. And he was like, wait, I think we have someone on staff who has a background in this. And so he came to me and said, hey, can we bring you on full time to do this? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And he's like, can you make us a program? And so we ended up, to my knowledge, I think we're still the only USA Swimming club that has someone full time embedded doing just purely mental performance work. I know we were for sure one of the first, but it's been great. It's the Wild West. So it's one of those, well, nobody's done it, so we can do it. But then it's also like, oh, nobody's done it. So what do we do? So it's a mixed bag, but it's the kids really embraced it. And I think they've really made it what it is because they've been really creative with, hey, can we do this? Or one thing in swimming, you always go before your race and you get tips from your coach. And one of the first times I was on deck at a meet with a lot of them, they came to me and said, hey, can we get tips? And I said, oh, I don't do technique, go to your coach. And they said, oh no, we're here for mental tips, which was something they made and they created it. And it's just kind of evolved since then. We now have an internship program, which I know we'll get into in a bit, but yeah, it's been really great. A long story, but
No, it's a great one. You said you started with a school. I presume it was a high school. Correct me if I'm wrong.
it was actually an elementary middle school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
that's
I,
very forward for a elementary middle school to bring somebody on.
oh,
That's really
I was
cool.
I was not doing sports psych at the time. I was just like teaching fitness to kinder through eighth graders. They marketed themselves as a leadership academy. And so I thought I would be doing a lot more sort of sports psych stuff. Really wasn't a lot of sports psych stuff,
Didn't go
but
that way. Got
I
it.
did learn a lot about like, classroom management and coaching and just, how to manage large groups of kids because managing a large group of soldiers I had done, it's a lot different than managing a large group of kindergartners.
Yeah, I could only imagine.
Yeah, new skill set there. So it was good.
Definitely, definitely. Getting to the mental performance aspect, I love the fact that students came up, or excuse me, the athletes came up and said, "Give me a mental tip." I love that. That's just so forward thinking of them. What kind of comments would you give at those mental tips before a race?
Usually it's just reinforcing like I never want to teach them a brand new skill in a competition setting, especially at like a high pressure sort of meet. So usually it's just like usually what it comes down to is, hey, I'm really nervous. Okay, we've worked on that. What skill, what tool would you want to use here, right? That we've talked about. Have you done your pre-performance routine? And sometimes I call it the zones. You have the green zone, yellow zone, red zone. If they're in the red zone, your brain has identified some sort of severe threat, right? If I do this, everyone's going to laugh at me and I'm going to be exiled from the tribe. No one's ever going to want to talk to me again, right? When you're in that, and I think this is one of the most important things I often tell coaches and parents because that's the moment they're like, it's my time. I'm going to give the best, most motivational speech of all time. And then they're like, why are they not listening to me? Well, when your nervous system is in that state, your brain thinks that you're fighting a bear. If you're fighting a bear, it doesn't help you to be like, hey, Mr. Bear, here is why you shouldn't eat me. Your brain goes, no, we're shutting the logic center off and we're going to go to fear, instinctual survival. And so that part of your brain that processes logic is not online. And they're like, they're not listening to me. I'm like, they can't, their brain can't process it. So a lot of what we do in those moments is more body relaxation, restoring a sense of safety so that that system can come back online so that you can use some of those cognitive tools as well.
You know, that makes a lot of sense. As I'm sitting here thinking of some of the big conversations I've had with people and moments of like that where you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh God, this could be the moment. This could be the moment. We got to make it a big moment. And you're looking at those student athletes going, they're not paying attention. Now it makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you.
It's a game changer because then you're, saving yourself some frustration of, they're not listening. Oh, I should try something else.
Yeah. Read the crowd. Read
Yeah.
the crowd. Wow. Well, that is a great tip. So thank you very much. I'll be using that and not just professionally, but also in the classroom, also on the field, also, well, you get the idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. With your certification, certified mental performance specialist,
Consultant.
consultant, my apologies.
It's a very hot button topic in sports psych at the conference in October. There was like an hour-long discussion of, is it coach, is it consultant? Well, we've trademarked it as consultant, so yeah.
Stick with it. So, what did it take to get there and go through the certification process and become certified?
In sports psych, for a long time, there was a little bit of it's still an issue. You might have a psychologist or, a life coach come in and say, I work with athletes and this is what I do. And they don't have the education and background of actual sports psychology. And the work they do is not informed by evidence or practice. And then it's not very good quality work. And now you have taught athletes something that maybe it's not working for them. And then you've turned them off from the entire thing. I never want to try this again. In my private practice, most of the athletes who come to me have worked with some sort of sports psych before, and it's been disastrous, right? And it's like, you know I have nerves before my race and they told me that I was afraid of the water. I'm like, what? And then they gave me a
Huh?
text. Yeah, yeah. And then they gave me a textbook about another sport and said teach yourself, and I'm like, so in order to try and stop that, they developed the certification so that people can know, like, okay, this person is competent in this, knows what they're doing. So in order to get that certification, you have to have some sort of master's level degree, either in exercise science, sports psychology, counseling, something in that field. And then once you have that certification, you do 400 hours of supervised work under someone else who is certified and has done a little bit of extra work in order to be a mentor. So at least 200 of that has to be directly with athletes or coaches. And then there's, support work. There's 40 hours of like you working with the mentor. And there's 10 hours of them directly watching you provide services. Once you have that, you have to go through an application process where they make sure, hey, have you taken the right classes, right? You turn in all of your syllabi from the last 10 years, which is a problem if, yeah, it's a problem if some of your colleges don't exist anymore. So
Yeah.
right now they're in the process of accrediting actual programs, so you won't have to go through that anymore. And then once you get through that, you sit for like a certifying board exam. And then once you have the certification, there's certain like CEUs you have to do to upkeep and maintain it. So it's a grueling process, but I do think there is value in it because at the time I was like, nobody's doing this. And I have seen just kind of working out in the field, like, yeah, there's some people doing really shady work. And I think a lot of the time coaches don't know what's good and what's not. And so hopefully a lot of the coaches I meet don't know that this certification exists. I think that's really important so that they know how to locate good quality resources for their athletes.
Which is something that is very difficult to do. As a clinician, I can say that. We're always looking for somebody. We're fortunate at the school I work at, we do have a mental health practitioner on site. He is also a former athlete and a basketball coach, so former coach as well. So he kind of gets it and kind of knows how to relate to the student athletes on that level. But there's some shady people out there just trying to make a buck. So knowing that there is a certification and credentialing program now kind of makes me feel a little better about this situation moving forward.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think, it's still pretty young. It's still fairly new. I mean, in the last 10 years, but I think over time it's definitely, it's going to be like looking for someone's licenses as a strength and conditioning coach and, knowing how to sort through that hopefully will get easier.
Well, I know it was super difficult. I mean, I'm ancient, so going back a bit, I did have a friend in college. This is what she wanted to do. We were talking one day in class because we had a few minutes to discuss stuff. And I asked her, so exactly what are you going to do? Her undergraduate was going to be coaching.
Hmm.
Her master's degree was going to be psych. And then she was going to try and mesh them together because at the time, and this is going back, geez, I graduated in 90 something, 94, 95. There was only like one or two programs in the nation at that point. She looked at me, I'm going to try those programs, but if not, I'm just doing my master's in psych and meshing the two together. And there were no credentials, there were no certifications. So this is really pushing the mental aspect of sport into the limelight, which really needs to be done because, as you and I both know, athletes are mental. They really are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been great to see like how that's evolved too. I think just normalizing it, especially at younger ages, that's been a really cool kind of side effect of the program that I've seen is that I've had our high schoolers come to me and they're like, "Yeah, we talk about at school, like, yeah, we have mental training tonight." And everyone else is like, "What is that?" And they're like, it's so weird to us because it's been so normalized for us. And we realize, oh, other people don't have that. And even, we're sending kids to off to college, and I'm like, okay, most colleges have somewhere now, and I'm realizing, oh, a lot of your college programs don't have that. So it's interesting to look at of just what it looks like at this level at this age. I took one of our interns. She's 14. Well, she's now 15, but she was 14 at the time. She went to the sports psychology conference this year with me, and it was really interesting to see she's interacting with some college kids there. And at one point, she turned to me, she said, "Why did they explain this to me like I have never done any mental training? I learned that when I was 8." And I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
well, so
love that.
just I'm hoping that becomes more common. So it's just so people do kind of take it for granted almost a little bit of just like, yeah, we learned that so young. I think that would be a really cool thing.
Now, you bring up the mentorship program with the teenagers. I was reading a little bit about it. And what a fantastic program to help bring along future clinicians or just to educate on how to mentally take care of themselves or help with their friends. Could you talk to our listeners about the mentorship program or internship?
It started, we had an athlete, she just graduated last year. She wanted to study sports psych. And so she came to me and said, I'm interested in doing this in college. And she swims for the University of Arkansas. So they don't have an undergrad program, but she's going to, like you were saying, study psych and then kind of go from there. I said, yeah, you could do some shadowing. And our head coach, Jason, he said, well, why don't you open this up to the club, see if anyone else is interested? You might get two or three others. And I think the first year I had 15 apply. And I was like, oh,
Holy
uh,
moly.
yeah, so I ended up I think I ended up with about 13 in the end for the first year. And then the next year, yeah, now I have about 15. And this year it kind of evolved too because I was just starting the private practice and just not really even pushing it. I had a couple Connecticut Swimming, for example, wanted me to come up and work with all of their coaches in their state and run a workshop for their coaches and athletes, which was awesome. And I've just had some other athletes and coaches who want resources for their club, and so that's a way for me to provide that. But I had one athlete who she quit the sport of swimming and she was like, "Hey, I still want to continue doing this internship." And so she's under my private practice now. And then I had a diver who sees me every day on deck and was like, "Hey, I really want to do this." But for the most part, they're through Lakeside. And it's just been the first year was kind of figuring out what it looks like. And it was like, okay, read a sports psychology book and we'll talk about sports psychology a little bit. And now it's evolved into a lot more of a what's the word I'm looking for? It's a lot more organized, right? So the first, like the fall semester, they go through and they learn about ethics. They learn about some just basic classroom management, basic counseling, theoretical things. They make a theoretical orientation, and then they make a little mock recording of like trying to use some basic skills like reflecting back what someone's saying or asking more open-ended questions, bringing some awareness to how they're talking to other people. And then by the end of the semester, if they have displayed like, I know how to make debrief questions, I know how to organize a session, I know how to pull from evidence and literature and synthesize it into an activity to teach someone, then in the spring, they get placed with a younger group. So in our club, we have about 1,300 swimmers. I don't have the capacity to do weekly sessions.
1300?
Correct, yes.
Holy moly.
So we have 4 different locations. So each day I'm at a different location with our 11 and over competitive swimmers. We try to run about 30-minute sessions for each group. I have about 21 of those groups once a week. This season's a little wonky. We're renovating one of our pools, but normally with that, I don't have the capacity to work with some of those younger, lower level competitive groups. So this also expands our resources within our club so that more of those kids get resources. And I think it comes better and more effectively from somebody closer in age to them. So
It's almost like peer counseling at the high school
yeah,
level.
exactly. Yep. So it's been really cool to just watch, like, I think at that level there's so much more neuroplasticity where the interns are able to pick it up so quick. It's just incredible to watch.
Elevate your knowledge, ignite your curiosity, and compete with the best minds at events hosted by the American Academic Competition Institute. AACI's sports medicine competitions feature practical exercises, challenging quizzes, specialty tests, and keynote speakers that foster knowledge and social engagement in healthcare and sports medicine. Go to aacitest.org for more information on upcoming regional and national competitions. Sign up for the ultimate intellectual showdown.
So Bailey, she's our intern that came to Montreal with me to present a poster, mind you, for the 4th time at a conference. It was just really interesting to watch, like, there were certain things that I didn't think she would really pick up on that she picked up on so fast, right? Like we were sitting in, they do this at the conference every year. It's almost like you get to sit on a session. They bring in like a fake athlete who comes up with a situation and they have 2 different people do a sports psych session and then they talk through like how they picked different techniques and all of that. And so she sat in on that with me and she was like, "Well, this is what I liked about his theory. I didn't like that approach." And I'm like, these are the people who wrote the theories, mind you. Like, that's incredible.
That is so cool.
So yeah, they pick up things very, very quickly. They're always keeping me on my toes of like, is some of them I'm like, I don't know how to teach you anymore because this is insane. So yeah, it's a really cool thing. And it's still young. I'm interested to see how it progresses, but it's cool.
So these are the future kids that are going to ditch class and go to the local university to listen to the PhD programs, is what you're saying.
They'll probably be in the PhD. They'll just, skip aspects
Skip
of
straight forward.
I mean, again, like this was a cool one at the conference. Somebody had a lecture about how to talk to teens. And, my 14-year-old intern sitting there going, well, I would actually do this. It's just, yeah, they'll create insane things. She was like, so how do I start doing research? I'm like, we don't have an IRB. Like,
For our listeners who don't know what an IRB is, can you?
oh, yeah. So if you're doing any sort of research, you have to basically it's saying like the things you're doing are ethical, right? And usually it's attached to either someone who's funding like a pharmaceutical or most often it's a university.
Thank you very much. You're really shaping the minds of the future, which is bitching. I mean, this is just so cool. It really is.
If for
Anytime.
better or for worse, we'll see what it gets shaped into.
I know that feeling all too well after 27 years of teaching. So, yeah. But I love how it seems to be a pattern with you. You see something you want to do, and if it's not there, you just build it. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, that's what so Andrew said to me once. He said, so, there was no one else doing what you're doing in swimming and you needed someone to consult with, so you just got fed up and created your own. I said, well, no, but yeah.
But yeah, yeah, that's really what I did, which I think is fantastic because it broadens a profession and it helps others. And ultimately, that's what we do. We help others. So that's just awesome.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to see like once some of the interns come out of college, how what they make of it. It'll be really kind of a long-term thing to look at.
Now, I know you've been really focusing for over a decade now on aquatics, swimming, diving. Have you branched into other athletic fields?
So I did work for a little bit with tactical athletes with the military, but besides that, I swimming is just what I wanted to focus on. And it's really backwards from the model that you're taught in sports psych. So I was told very often that I would probably not be able to make a living doing that. I would not have a job. And I think that's often the concern, and that's often the model in sports psych. Like they want you to do everything, right? If you're within a school, if you're within a college, you're going to be doing mental health, mental performance, and all of the sports. And if you're lucky, maybe you get a subset of sports. Maybe you're only doing mental performance or mental health. But I think often we want to make as much of the resource as possible, which, I understand that. But I do think in order to, and I know people disagree with this is such a hot take, but I really do think like in order to do the best quality work you can do, specializing in one sport is the way to do it. And I say that because even now, like sometimes I'll talk to others in the field and I'll be like, hey, I'm having this issue. What would you do in this situation? And if it's not someone who has worked extensively in the sport, the answers I get back are not things that realistically work in the real world. Like it looks great on paper, it looks great on a textbook. And I think that's another, this is a hot topic in our industry as well. Like there's a big divide between applied and academia. And I think that's true in a lot of fields. But really, the best teachers I had coming up were people who were actively doing the work. And, a lot of what gets taught, again, it looks great in a textbook. It does not work in the real world.
So true, so true.
So I think that's just a really important thing. And that's one of the reasons like I really do like exclusively working with the sport. Like I mentioned earlier, I've had a lot of athletes come to me and they're like, I've had horrible experiences with people just not understanding, people assuming. I worked with someone once who we worked with some divers and they asked us, hey, will you come off the boards with us on one practice so that we can have an understanding, like, what we're doing and what you're asking us to put ourselves through.
So they asked you to go diving.
They did.
I hope it was the short one, not the.
It was not.
Oh, was it is it the 10 meter?
No, it was 3 meters, so it
Okay,
wasn't too bad.
but
Um,
still, that's a little bit of a drop.
oh, and it was, they were like, we're going to coach you through this, which was awesome. It was, I think, a really great experience. But one of them, I'm halfway off 3 meter, and he goes, "Oh, by the way, if you do this wrong, you're gonna dislocate both of your shoulders." I'm already in the air, so I smacked face first off of 3 meter, and that was my intro into diving.
Love it.
But I knew another consultant who they asked him, and he showed up not wearing really the right attire. And he straight up told some of the divers, like, "Hey, I don't want to talk to you if you're in a swimsuit. It's inappropriate." And they never wanted to talk to him again.
Just lost all credibility with those athletes.
Exactly. And so I think that's a big thing. You have to know how to create the credibility, what's going to make or break your credibility. And for me, that was something I was really lucky to have. Is when I met Andrew in undergrad, he spent so many years just being like, "Don't say that to an athlete. Like, don't do that. That's going to destroy your credibility. Here's what you need to say. Here's how you need to, here's how an athlete's going to take that. Here's how a swimmer is going to interpret that. This is the right approach. This is the wrong approach." And I think that meticulousness, if that's a word, that level of detail was so important in learning the sport from the sports psych lens, because it really helped me to learn how to maintain that credibility. And even there's times I'm like, I don't know what this athlete is talking about. How do I figure it out? Right. And that willingness to learn goes a long way, I think, with the athletes too.
And that trust that's built at that point is what makes the difference between potentially helping and not helping, or a breakthrough, or whatever, dealing with whatever issues they have. You got to have that trust build up.
Yeah, and I think the trust comes from immersing yourself in that world. In grad school, I would come take my work and just sit at the pool and do it on deck. And, people could come and just being around it, right? It's not like you have to study it necessarily, but just being around it. A lot of moments, something that's really interesting for me is the girls will often hang back after a session and ask questions. The guys, it's more often going to happen at a meet. So I try not to spend too much time at a meet unless it's like, you know, junior nationals or a state level meet or something where it's the end of the season, it's a really high pressure meet. But a lot of the time, I don't want to be at every session for a meet, because for those of you who don't know, swim meets are multiple days, usually like all day.
Very lengthy, definitely very lengthy.
So I don't want to create the dependence of, you need me to be on deck in order for you to have a good swim, because there might be a time I'm not there and I don't want that to crash. But, I think spending some time at least being in that environment, because that's where in swimming during practice, you can't really talk to them. But at a meet, everyone's kind of there and you have a lot of time to kill in between things. And so that's where, people can get to know me as a person, and just building that trust and rapport and credibility is so important there.
Totally understand. And for anyone that hasn't been to a meet, oh boy, there is a lot of downtime, except for those minutes that they are on the deck getting ready to jump in and go. And when they're going, that's it, it's on. But
Yeah.
in between, I could see how that could become a good mental awareness moment, a good mental focusing moment, and lots of opportunities. But you're talking, like you said, days. I mean, a short tournament is 2 days. I know we cover that for league every year, minimum 2 days. And I think diving's a day before, excuse me. So 3 days. Yikes. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I mean, you have some meets that are 4 days even. It's a long, and if it's a prelims finals meet, and it's also just the environment on deck is very chaotic. It takes a lot of energy out of you. And so it's the pressure, it's really easy to break you down a little bit there. So it's good to have just So, that's where a lot of it happens is, oh, I don't need anything. I really like your shoes. By the way, I'm having a lot of anxiety about this race. So it also just provides an opportunity for less vulnerability to get those skills.
Makes total sense. I like that. By the way,
There's a lot of by the ways.
by the way, just in case you didn't know, I was wondering. So, actually, I like it when they start with so.
Yes.
It's always a fun one.
Well, hypothetically, what would you do here? Yeah, well,
Hypothetically, there is no hypothetical. Come on, let's talk. What's up? Man, that's so cool. Let's talk a little bit about your private practice now. Brainwaves Performance Consultant. What are you doing there?
it's the same thing. It's just so it allows me to provide resources to other coaches and other athletes across the country. I think there's not, it's really, we talked about, it's really hard to find good resources.
Totally.
And it's hard to, we're really lucky with Lakeside. We have a huge club. We have, again, 1,300 swimmers roughly. And so we have the resources to have me on full time. Some smaller clubs, they only have 50, 100, 200 kids. They can't afford to have someone on full time. And so it provides them the opportunity of like, hey, I would love someone to come do a workshop with our coaches, or have this athlete every time they get up on the blocks, they vomit. I don't know what to do. And so
Ew.
it just allows for some resources there.
Yeah, I would think with 1,300 athletes, you have your hands pretty full. And so to be able to find time to consult, yikes, that's takes up a good chunk of the day, I'm sure.
It does. Well, I mean, it it's a weird mix because you're working with high schoolers, and so for most of the day, they're in school. And so there's a lot of like time for prep and all of that. During the day, it's easy to consult with coaches and do some Zooms like that. And then a lot of the kids, they're like, I'm homeschooled. I can meet during the day. So that's nice too. But it's just, yeah, finding those little windows of time. It's hard.
I know it all too well. With helping others and trying to get them into the right frame of mind, what are some of your go-to techniques that you seem to use more often than not?
I think the number one technique that swimmers usually cite as like this one is really helpful would be box breathing. That one's it's pretty basic. It's just even inhale, you hold your breath, exhale, hold your breath, and it's a box. Everybody prefers different amounts. Like I usually start out with 6 seconds. So 6 second inhale, hold your breath, 6 second exhale, hold your breath. But some people prefer different amounts, but it just helps calm your nervous system. Really, a lot of the techniques that I teach, this gets a little more technical, but it goes through your vagus nerve. So for those of you who don't know your vagus nerve, it's longest nerve in your body. And
Number 10, number 10.
yep, exactly. And when we trigger that nerve, so like when that nerve vibrates, it acts as the brake pedal for our nervous system. And so there's a lot of different ways you can do that: listening to music, humming, breathing. So usually a lot of the self-regulation techniques go through that. But then there's also co-regulation, just, spending time with teammates can be really helpful. In swimming, a lot of it is just nervous system, right? Like it's you and your thoughts. How are you going to have control over your emotions, your energy level? That's another one that I think is really helpful to teach, that swimmers usually are like, that one really stands out to me. It's not really a technique, but it's called IZOF, IZOF, and it stands for Individual Zone of Optimal Functioning. So it's just finding that sweet spot, right? Like basically what the model shows is as your energy increases, so does your athletic performance up until a point. Then if the energy continues to increase, you're going to have a performance decline. And so you got to know where that sweet spot is for you and how do you get your energy level there. If it's too high, you got to become aware of it and have tools to bring you down. If it's too low, you got to become aware of it and have tools to bring you up. So that's one that we work on a lot, that I think it's an easy one to picture, And it's really helpful in having that language to talk about, hey, where are you on this scale?
Yeah, finding the sweet spot. That's in any trade, profession, athletics. What a way to go. Can you say it one more time? IZOF stands for
Individual zone of optimal functioning.
of optimal functioning. There we go. I missed that part. Optimal functioning. I like that. I'm gonna have to use that in class.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, one you could use in class that I like a lot as far as motivation is I call it the car model. So it's what drives your motivation, what drives your effort. It's a car. You have to be competent, you have to feel you have some autonomy, and you have to feel there's some level of relatedness, right? And usually if you see a drop in one of those, you're going to see a drop in motivation. That comes from self-determination theory, but I think that one's really helpful, especially working with injured athletes, because an injury, usually all three of those drop and you see a drop in motivation. That's where you can start, right? Hey, do you feel like you have any sort of strengths here, that you're good at something that relates to this? Do you feel like you have any independence? What do you have a choice in here? And, do you feel like understood by other people in this environment? Do you feel like you belong, that you relate to the other people? And if not, let's set some goals in each one of these to take it up from, if you're at a 5, how do we get it to a 6 and keep it there? And I think that's a good place to start if you're seeing like, you know, this one can be really frustrating if you're working with people and you're like, why aren't you motivated? So that's a cool one to pull out.
Oh, my students are always motivated, right, guys? If you're listening, yeah, totally. I would never have to motivate them at all.
Oh,
They
I
are,
don't care.
yeah, yeah. And if you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you. So, no, I love these tips. These are awesome, and obviously, I'm taking notes because whatever helps me become a better clinician, teacher, educator, mentor, I want to use it in my bag of tricks. So, thank you so much. This is
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, I
Very
think
cool.
that's one that gets missed a lot. Like, I think a lot of the time it's like, oh, this is for the athletes. No, no, this is also for the coaches. Can be so helpful.
Anyone and everyone can utilize this. I love it. But I'd really like to get your perspective on if you could go back in time. So, not 10 years ago, but to that young student that was sneaking into the PhD classes to listen, what's a piece of advice you would give that individual?
Hmm. I think just generally like don't limit yourself to what I think any coach or teacher would agree with this. Like sometimes students and athletes depend a lot on like, you are in charge of teaching me. You have to take some ownership over that. Like I learned so much more from just
So true. Yeah,
listening to podcasts and reading books. Like I still, I mean, I am out of room for, I have so many bookshelves and I still have books stacked all over my floor. And some of them I haven't even read. I was just like, oh, that looks interesting. But go out of your way, sneak into those classes, right? Like, not to that level, you don't have to, but like, hunt down some knowledge you want to learn, right? Be hungry for learning because it doesn't have to even be within the domain you're looking at. You're going to find a way to utilize it, right? Be creative with how you're learning. Look for things outside of like just the normal, this is what's being handed to you, and just be curious about things. I think also like it's really important to find somebody to collaborate with and to push you and to build with you on things because I really do think like Andrew, who was the swimmer I met in college, like he really would push back on a lot of things for me and be like, that wasn't good enough, redo it. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? And if it was just me, I wouldn't necessarily I think I'm wrong about things. I think it's important to have someone who's willing to tell you, hey, you're wrong, redo this, and, find somebody who you can listen to that will push you outside of that comfort zone, if that makes sense.
totally. We need a network that pushes back. We don't need yes people around us to make us better. We need people around us to say, yeah, no, you're full of it.
Oh, it's not pleasant.
Yeah.
It's really annoying, but I think you do need it to get to that extra level.
Yep. To improve, to get stronger mentally, physically, emotionally. You need to learn, and you don't learn from being right all the time.
I wish you could though. That'd be
Oh
great.
man, wouldn't that be fantastic? Oh, I'd like to be right a little more often. That'd be awesome. You had a great quote in there, by the way, and I loved it. Be hungry for learning. I absolutely love that. That's such a nice quote. I'm gonna
Sounds
steal
so
that for you.
cheesy, but it's so true.
Yep,
It's I'll put it on a Hallmark card somewhere.
there we go, and I'll buy it, and I'll say I know who coined this phrase. I love it, love it, love it, love it. Jasmine, this has been fantastic. I've learned so much. Very jealous that a swim club has a performance consultant on their staff, a certified mental performance consultant. Very jealous, very jealous. I only know a couple high schools, period, that have utilized this model. And my understanding is it's worked very well. We talked about them on a couple of other episodes, just a snippet, just a brief comment on them. So to know that an entire club has one, wow, you're making a difference for those, well, student athletes or athletes.
Cool.
Um,
No,
very awesome.
I'm very lucky. It's a great job, and I love it's just cool watching them grow.
Yep,
Art.
it is. It really is. I got to agree with you on that one. That's probably the best part of my job is watching the students develop into the young person, the young adult they're going to be. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't want to take up too much of your day. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you do. And I guarantee we're going to circle back because mental health is such a big aspect of the profession, sports medicine, athletic training, that we're going to want you back. I guarantee it. So, Gabe, get on it, would you?
Anytime. I thank you for having me. It's thank you for giving honestly having a platform like this is really, really cool. Like for
Well,
everybody in sports medicine, because it's hard to find good podcasts about sport medicine.
well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I'll reiterate, it was not my idea. This was our producer Gabriel's idea, and I kind of went with it and went, sure, we'll try one episode. Why not? And I think this is around our 75th one we have recorded, give or take, and we've aired about 50 of them. So we're getting there. We're getting there.
Really cool.
Yeah. Thank you very much. You have a wonderful day. Thank you for being part of Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and more. Have a
Thank
great day.
you too.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Want to make sure you hear every episode? Remember to like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast. Don't forget to share our podcast with your colleagues, family, and friends. Your support will help more people find and enjoy our content. Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More is directed by Eli Halleck. It is produced by Gabriel Halleck. Our theme music is by Coma Studios via Pixabay. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are solely those of the contributors. Want to know more about us? Visit us at wrapituppodcast.com. That's with one P, wrapituppodcast.com. Wrap It Up Sports Medicine and More is a production of Halleck Consulting, LLC.